Okay, we're going to go ahead and start. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us in our monthly Ask the Expert webinar. Today, we have Marte Matthews. She will be discussing food allergy fears. Once again, if you missed a little bit of the beginning, I will be posting this on our YouTube. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us after the webinar. And then I'm going to hand it over to Marte.
Thanks so much, Catherine. I appreciate it. Welcome, everyone. My name is Marte Matthews, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist working with children and families. And I work here at the Sean Parker Center for Allergy and Asthma Research, hand in hand with the doctors, some of whom are joining us today. It's wonderful to see you. What I'd like to talk about today is not the medical aspect of food allergies, but the social, emotional, and behavioral aspects of food allergies, particularly food allergy fears. And I'll be talking more about what some of those different social, emotional, behavioral aspects can look like. Let's go on to our next slide. So as I work with families at the Sean Parker Center, enrolled in many of our clinical trials or in my private practice in San Jose, I see a lot of these different kinds of issues coming up for children and preteens, teenagers, and it can look a lot of different ways, but some of the things we see very frequently are social concerns. So when children are really anxious about food allergies, we understand how stressful it can be, it can show up in a lot of unpleasant behavior. So some clinginess, refusing to participate socially, acting really immature for their age, or emotional concerns, feeling scared, excessive worries, also irritability and being annoyed a lot of the time, shutting down, crying, grumpiness, unexplained tummy aches and headaches and other aches and pains, as well as behavioral concerns, being overly argumentative, refusing to cooperate with the directions that parents are giving, sometimes refusal to participate with the things that are medically necessary in order to manage their food allergies. But we can also see things like procrastinating and avoiding doing things. So these really unpleasant and really difficult behaviors, what is underlying all of the different ways that these can show up is fear. And we need to recognize what is at the root of it so that we can respond appropriately. Let's move on to the next slide. One of the most important things to recognize about food allergy fears is that fear all by itself is not actually bad. It's not the enemy. Fear can be really helpful in just the right amounts. Fear all by itself is not helpful or hurtful. It's really about the choices that we make as a result of it. Feelings give us information. Strong, uncomfortable feelings tell us that something is not right and that we need to figure out how to make some changes. So fear is actually a really helpful signal. And when it comes to food allergies, fear is one of the things that's going to keep us safe. But what we hear about so frequently is that there's too much fear too often can sometimes lead us to making choices that aren't great. And that's where the problem is. So I really try and encourage people not to think about getting rid of their fear so much as figuring out how to make choices and be aware of the fears and figure out ways of working with it. Let's move on to the next slide. When we are able to accept our fears and not fight against the fear, we can learn ways to manage fears better. Some people fight fear by bottling it up or shutting down some of the fears. And unfortunately, that actually can make the problem worse. Almost like during the summertime, if you're playing in a pool and you've got a beach ball and you're trying to push that under the water. And eventually, that's going to fly up and you're going to get splashed in the face. When we try and suppress fears, they come out when you least expect it. And sometimes when it causes bigger problems. So if as adults, we are giving kids signals that they need to put a lid on it, or we're giving them messages like, don't be ridiculous. It's not that bad. Let's just get this done. The child is likely to have a big reaction to that. They're going to feel misunderstood and angry at the rejection. On the other hand, when we as a parent or as the adults around an anxious child can be accepting of the fear and not let our children's big fears scare us into our own fight, flight, or freeze reaction, then we can be more effective at trying to solve problems together. For instance, if a parent has the reaction, I can see that you're really upset about this, and I'm here to listen to whatever it is that you have to say. I'd like to understand if you'd give me a chance. We're actually likely to see the child be able to calm down, or the teenager be able to calm and communicate rather than shutting us out. The best time to step in with coping skills is before the next big crisis. So not waiting to try and figure out what to do reactively. We take the information that we've had before, we try and use it to plan ahead. We identify some of the early warning signs, and part of my role in consultation with families in the clinic or in private practice here is working on strategies to be helpful for everyone. Because when our kids get anxious, of course, that provokes reactions in us as well. So let's talk about some of what I mean about coping skills. Let's move to the next slide. I think of coping skills as kind of being in two toolboxes. One toolbox is all kinds of different relaxation strategies. The next toolbox is distraction strategies. And these are two large groups of coping skills. Most people have a strong preference. They either really like relaxation skills or they really like distraction skills. But a lot of people find that they need to kind of take the best from each one of those, find what works for them, and then really use the strategies that are most effective. And some of what might work really well for your spouse, some of what might work for your teenager, some of what might work for you, they could all be different. And it doesn't mean that anybody else's decisions are wrong or mistaken. Everybody is going to just have their favorites. It's like having a favorite flavor, and everybody can have different preferences. Don't judge. Use the information about what works best. Share ideas, but don't take it personally if your kids don't love the ideas that work best for you. So let's talk more about a couple of specific relaxation strategies and what distraction can look like. So next slide, relaxation. One example of a relaxation technique is taking deep breaths, slow, deep breaths. Activate the diaphragm muscles high in your abdomen. They soothe the vagus nerve that runs from your spinal column all the way into your gut. And that nerve, when it is soothed with slow, deep breaths, that signals our parasympathetic nervous system, which allows for a calming response. I invite you to try out this strategy. One thing, if you're having an asthma flare-up today, you might want to sit this one out. Just do some nice, slow, deep breaths while we're doing this technique. You can visualize a small box, like a Kleenex box. And the idea is that you imagine slowly tracing your finger up one side as you inhale, and then hold your breath for a moment as your finger gently traces across the top. Exhale slowly and silently as you trace your finger down, and then hold on that exhale as you come back to where you started on the box. You can try for a count of 4. As I said, if you're having an asthma flare-up today, or if holding your breath is uncomfortable and you might get a little bit of a speeding up of your heart rate, all you need to do is a slow inhale and a slower exhale. So we can try the box breathing, or you can try a slow inhale with a slower exhale. If you want to practice the box breathing, we'll do that next. So when you're ready, you can begin tracing up on the inhale. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And hold. And then 2, 3, and 4. And exhale. 2, 3, and 4. And hold. 2, 3, and 4. If that pace was too fast for you, then you can go ahead and change that pace. If that was too slow for you, you can change the pace. You figure out what works for you, and then gradually you begin to slow it down. If someone is hyperventilating, they may find that it's useful to breathe into a paper bag. But if they're just needing to slow down the breath, this box breathing technique is one that can be helpful. Another idea, like I said, is to have a slow inhale, but a slower out breath. All of these are relaxation techniques that slow the breath in order to allow the parasympathetic nervous system to calm your body. Just let the breath come naturally now. If it's hard to slow down, try it to a count of 3. If it's easy to slow down, you've got a good foundation to build on. There are many different breathing techniques, and there are wonderful apps like Insight Timer or Calm or Headspace that can guide people through different kinds of breathing techniques to help with relaxation. Let's switch over to distraction and learn a little bit about what that looks like. So distraction techniques can also look a lot of different ways. Here in the clinic, we often see families come in with a backpack or even a wagon loaded up with books and coloring supplies and iPads. So those would absolutely be distraction techniques. I'm going to share one that I work on in therapy with a lot of people of every age, and that's change the channel. Folks who like distractions can practice over and over and over again to call up a pleasant memory. You can use a photo from a trip to Lake Tahoe, or even just a trip to the beach, favorite vacation spot, or cuddling or playing with a pet. In therapy, we practice this change the channel technique to go from the distressing thought to a pleasant thought. And we practice again and again and again until someone can control this process as easily as changing the channel with a remote control. And that way, when the scary situation does come up, can take a break for just a couple of minutes, re-regulate, take a couple of deep breaths, and then come back in the same way that taking a long vacation helps you to get back to work and be refreshed, right? So distraction techniques and relaxation techniques like deep breaths, these all take some practice. So if you've been frustrated or disappointed before by trying to take some deep breaths and you feel like, this just doesn't work. I don't understand why people say, like, take some deep breaths, you'll feel better. I don't feel better. What I'd encourage you to do is to begin a daily practice when you're not feeling highly stressed, because we can actually condition a relaxation response. We can condition a change the channel distraction technique in the same way that an ice skater learns how to do a pirouette or a basketball player learns how to do a layup. It requires some practice. It doesn't just automatically come. So I'm going to share one more therapeutic technique that I use when handling food allergy fears. Let's move on to the next slide. This is a technique that we use in cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. And we can use the idea of thinking about our thinking. This is a big part of CBT. The example on the left is an understandable freak out about being invited to a birthday party when you have a food allergy. So what a lot of kids think about, or you can have a parental version of this also. OMG, my friend is having a party and I really wish I could go, but I'm really scared. What if they have all this food and I can't eat any of it? Forget it. I didn't want to go anyway. So we can see the social issues, the emotional issues, and the behavioral issues all coming up in this one example of a little bit of a freak out and being invited to a birthday party when you have food allergy. In therapy, one of the things that I work on with people of any age is being mindful and aware of how our thinking is hurtful and how our thinking can be shifted to be helpful. When we're mindful about what's happening to us, we can realize, okay, I need to use one of my coping strategies. I need to take a step back, and I need somebody to talk to and figure out, is there some way that I might be able to do something so that maybe I could go? We can take the time to hear out the person who's having a momentary freak out so that we can just process whatever it is that's going on. We can reflect and be understanding instead of being afraid that our child is going to take a pass on yet another social opportunity. We can think about the situation in a different way. So this exact script is not going to work for every single person, but is one example of a way that we might be able to, with a little bit of effort, move in a more helpful direction. We can change a panicky all or nothing reaction into a pattern that's a little more flexible. So the mindfulness bit, oh, okay, yeah. Invitations to things like this kind of freak me out. Okay, I'm having a freak out. All right, what can I do? All right, I need to figure out how to deal with this. I need to take a break, need to calm down. Okay, some of the things we might be able to do. We can call ahead, we can ask about the food. We can offer to bring food that's safe for me. I can bring enough to share, and that, something that would taste good for everybody. I can eat enough before I go to the party that I won't be hungry. I won't be too left out. I can bring my own treat. Mom and I can make some cupcakes so that I can bring my own cupcake that I know is going to be safe. But I also know that I have a friend at the party, Aisha. She gets it. She knows. Maybe I can go. So we started off with this all or nothing idea, and we moved into a space where we have a little more flexibility, using some coping skills, using some other ideas so that it's not all or nothing. All or nothing thinking is considered a thinking trap when we're using cognitive behavioral therapy approaches. So these are 3 examples just to give you an idea about some of the kinds of things that are useful or helpful for many people who are dealing with food allergy fears. Next slide. When you're working on improving coping skills, calming skills, distraction, reflecting on your thinking, we can recognize some of the signs of fear. We can be more accepting rather than just reactive to our own fears or fears that other people have. I've shared 2 examples of ways to calm fears and 1 example of thinking about our thinking. These strategies can be used for food allergy worries. They can be used for other kinds of worries too. For example, test anxiety is super common, particularly among kids in Silicon Valley schools, and many other problems that we deal with every day. Fears can be put in their place. And when we recognize it's kind of taking over, we can right size it, and we can learn ways to stay calmer and be happier a step at a time. I really appreciate everybody's participation today and attending. And I would really welcome questions in the chat. Catherine, if there are questions, I'd be happy to try and address those.
Thank you so much, Marte. I just wanted to remind everyone that this webinar, as well as all of our webinars, are actually recorded and they are posted onto our YouTube page. If you search up Sean M. Parker Center, all of our previous videos should show up. So we have about 5 minutes. If you have any questions for Marte, feel free to put it in the chat. So the first question I see here, do you think these same techniques work for parents who have fears, Marte?
In a lot of ways, they really can. And one of the things that I work on with parents is learning how to build our own self-regulation skills. If we're not able to do it, it's so hard to support anybody else in being able to do this. So learning the kinds of things that help us with calming, learning which apps have really great techniques that are useful for us, and learning about relaxation and distraction. Mindfulness based stress reduction is so powerful in reducing and managing stress and anxiety. A lot of the HMOs now are actually providing those classes for free, sometimes online now. That's the silver lining of the pandemic, is that so many things are available online. So these things can be very, very helpful for adults, especially to take some space and not be as reactive to our children having really big feelings. Whenever we're around somebody who has really big feelings, that can cause a lot of really big feelings for us. So we need to be able to take a step back so that we can listen without just reacting. It's a great question. Thank you.
And then our second question, thanks for the insight. Have you used the same methods or techniques for children and adolescents, or have you needed to use different methods for adolescents?
So these three are the broad categories of the things that tend to be very effective regardless of age. The one thing that I would say about thinking about your thinking is that it does require a certain amount of maturity. And while you can teach a child mindfulness, it's harder to teach the self-reflection to children. I'd say usually before the age of 9. Sometimes with a really bright 7.5 or 8-year-old, you might be able to kind of teach them some of the techniques and they might catch on. But most teenagers and adults are able to take that idea of thinking about their thinking, and with a therapeutic process over the course of a number of weeks, are gradually able to begin to internalize some of these skills. Relaxation techniques are something that we often try to begin and practice continually, and creating a daily relaxation practice is a really fundamental part of any kind of stress management that we do at any age.
And then our last question, I know Jyoti answered this a little bit, but how do you help a child who has fear around a blood draw?
Yeah. So I definitely work with lots of people around needle fears, both in my private practice in San Jose as well as in clinic. And the idea is that we want to start small and gradually build on successes. in order to help a person to be less fearful. One of my new favorite resources is a website from the Meg Foundation. Meg, like the girl's name, Meg Foundation. I'd encourage everyone to visit the Meg Foundation website, which has a set of questions that you can go on and answer. And the website will then send you step-by-step directions about how you can create a gradual desensitization series of steps that you can do at home or in consultation with a mental health professional, and to be able to build on small successes at first and gradually the phrase that I use with children is exercise your brave muscles, where we can help people gradually become desensitized or accustomed to some of these other stimuli, and gradually be able to let go of some of those fears. The Meg Foundation resource is just amazing and very valuable and available completely free to anyone.
Thank you so much, Marte. I know it's 101 already. Thank you again to everyone who joined us on the webinar today. Please join us next month on March 22nd, and again on a Wednesday, for Dr. Andrew Long's talk. He'll be talking about the microbiome and food allergy. Once again, thank you so much. And if you have any questions at all, please feel free to email us. Email me, Marte, anyone, and our inquiry email as well if you have any questions, and we will answer those questions for you. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thank you, Marte.
Thanks, Catherine.